if we are under the illusion that we are the doer, then it can be difficult to be confident.
True confidence comes from knowing you're not the doer, and therefore where is your confidence coming from? It's coming from a place where eternal confidence resides.
I think it takes such a level of faith first and foremost, and faith is not just a belief system, but it's the knowing that Krishna is the captain of my ship. Our actions should be backed by good guidance.
Spiritualists are at battle every day. They're going totally against the grain in the principles that they're following, when the world on the other side is totally declining in principles and morality and ethics.
You don't need to think about what you need to do, you just need to understand that it's already happening.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join this candid spiritual community to hear more conversations that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on that subscribe button because I love your support. I love seeing all the comments pouring through, all the love pouring through, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, whether you're a spiritual seeker or you're just curious about the topic. And we really hope that our conversations will provide you food for thought and inspiration for your own spiritual journey. So join us for honest, candid discussions about spirituality for soul's sake.
For soul's sake, for soul's sake.
We're back for soul's sake, another episode of Deep Spirituality with none other than Nam and Keli. We are speaking today about confidence in spirituality. Oftentimes it's understood that spiritual people are meant to be behind the scenes. They're meant to be humble and meek and quiet and sitting at the back and not really at the forefront of things. So how do we explain personalities like spiritual leaders and people who are at the forefront? Are they really spiritual? Can you still be spiritual and have a voice of confidence? The verse that we've chosen based on this and to frame it is from chapter 3, text number 27 of the Bhagavad Gita, our book of choice, our incredible book of choice. The verse translates, "The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature." So doing things based on false ego means that we're bewildered, that we think that we're the doer of activities. How do the two topics relate, what I just spoke about in the verse?
I think that if we are under the, according to the Bhagavad Gita, illusion that we are the doer, then it can be difficult to be confident because we fear judgment and we fear ridicule, and we can also become attached to platform. But understanding that Krishna's the doer, that God is the doer, and we're merely a conduit, in that way we can be very confident, because what are we really doing? So that's my understanding of this word ahankara, this false ego, is the idea that we are doing, rather than we are merely a conduit or a tool or an instrument for God's will. What do you think, Nam?
Yeah, I agree.
Just close the episode there. No, tell us more.
No, I agree. I think this one point around true confidence comes from knowing you're not the doer, and therefore where is your confidence coming from? It's coming from a place where eternal confidence resides, where the source of all strength, true authenticity, truth, power, control actually comes from. And when you sort of source your confidence from that place, I think it's like, for example, when a mother goes out to feed herself, she'll do a certain level of aptitude. But when a mother's going out to feed her hungry child, she's going to call on resources which she wouldn't call on to feed herself only.
Yeah.
That selflessness drives, that love and selflessness drives a certain level of tenacity, right? In endeavor. And I think spiritual circles can also be the same. This term spiritual warrior, right? We don't often think of spiritualists as being warriors, but we have to be warriors in today's world. We live in a world which spiritualists are a battle every day. They're going totally against the grain in the principles that they're following, when the world on the other side is totally declining in principles and morality and ethics. And I mean, you just got to spend 10 minutes on social media going through, and you just see how many people are exploiting their bodies just for the sake of earning a quick buck. And so I think it's quite apt, I think, and I think it's quite fit for the time to be a spiritual warrior, and that means to fight for what you are and what you believe in and the path you want to take. My spiritual teacher, mine and Keli's spiritual teacher, actually, he said to me one thing. He said, when you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling like doing a practice, the best way to attack it is you need to treat your spiritual practice, your relationship with your spiritual practice, and all of the opposing energies with a sporting manner. So if it's like a boxing match, you get hit in the face, you don't just go, "Oh, see you later." Yeah. Like the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight, It's like,
that was fully, but that's a different level of staging, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Controversy.
But you don't just sit back. You go, okay, fine, you hit me. I'm reeling up. I'm reeling up for the next punch. And this is how I'm going to do it. So our attitude to practicing our spiritual life against the opposing energies of the world needs a level of tenacity, confidence, and warrior-like mentality.
It is tough. Like, I'm just thinking about someone listening to this. Like, if you're, I don't know, Claire listening to this, that is thinking, not being the doer, acting on spiritual strength. Like, give me an example of when you've lived in such a way, either of you, where you feel like you've acted on the strength of divine purpose, or where you felt like you're not the doer.
I think for me, it's not so much a question of action. It's more a question of surrender.
Okay, tell me more.
Like there's that verse, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. So Krishna is, God is the Param Ishvara, the supreme controller. And what we try and do is we become little Ishvaras, right? We become little controllers. And it's actually in that attempt to control, we become anxious, and our attempts to control and enjoy are thwarted, and we become frustrated in that sense. So
that makes sense.
When you actually step away and take your foot off the pedal and let the actual person that's in control take control, then I think there's a flow to life, if that makes sense. So for me, it's less about like acting, but more about surrendering to, like we were saying, being an instrument in that sense.
Yeah. Just looking at me.
Yeah, just like, you look pensive, you look thoughtful. What you got something in the chamber?
Reflecting on what Keli was saying, I think it's really interesting. Like we've read these kind of terminologies before, so we kind of take it a little bit more lightly. But when you first read this conclusion, you are not the doer, you're not the controller, you're not actually the lord of anything.
Right.
That is all the position of Krishna or God. It's hard because we are so used to seeing our actions and the relevant reaction. We're used to someone working really hard and making, a beautiful life for themselves. We're used to, whether it's earning money or, pursuing a love interest or buying this, buying that, and seeing everything happen. And then to say to someone, actually, well, you're not really the doer. You never did any of that. And they're kind of like, well, I did.
I put in the hours.
Yeah,
I worked hard.
I put in the hours. I put in the time, made the sacrifice. So how do we reconcile that?
Well, the idea is, in the Christian community, they say that God can't drive a parked car. Meaning like we have to do something first. We have to make Picasso, he said something similar. Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working.
Yeah.
Like you have to be, if you're going to be a spiritual warrior and you want to be used in the battle against illusion, then you have to at least show up to the battlefield with a sword in your hand, and then let God take over. But that's what I would say to Claire, is like, you don't need to think about what you need to do. You just need to understand that it's already happening, and you just need to surrender to that plan. Like,
show up.
you know, we were staying in Vrindavan in this place called MVT, and there's this very endearing man that works on the reception there. And every time I spoke to him, I learned...
fella.
Short guy.
Rajiv.
Can't remember his name. Rajiv.
Yeah.
Amazing guy. Such a... just a, like, simple, hospitable person. But every time I spoke to him, I was like, how's it going? And, you know, are you busy today? And he was so busy all the time, you know. Like, the one day I spoke to him, and he'd had 3 hours sleep, and he actually slept at the reception, and he was doing all of these other jobs.
Crazy.
And sometimes I spoke to him, I've got a big headache and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, how are you doing this? How are you working so hard? And he would just point to a picture behind me of Krishna, and he said, I'm not doing anything. He's doing everything. Or I asked him about his headache. You've got a headache, you know, how are you going to look after that? He said, it's not my headache. It's his headache. I'm just feeling it for him. And so, like, his whole consciousness was, I'm not doing anything. What am I doing? You know?
I think it takes such a level of faith, first and foremost. And faith is not just a belief system, but it's the knowing that Krishna is the captain of my ship. That's one thing. And the second is that our actions should be backed by good guidance as well. Like, you know, it's not that I'm going to go and stab up a bunch of people and say, Krishna made me do it. But, like, there's some guidance as well involved there that, you know, you take on a service that's trying to please God and try and uplift the people in general. And it doesn't have to be in front of a microphone. It could be a humble service, or it can be something that's not even seen. And at the same time, you go and seek guidance on how to perform that service, how to contribute, and how to bring the upliftment of society at large. And all the while holding the pot on your head. There's this concept that my teacher talks about called Prayojan Bodh. And in India, for example, you'll see these these village ladies who are carrying huge clay pots of water or milk or butter, whatever it is, on top of their heads. And they'll, at the same time, be doing all different manner of activities. They'll be holding their baby in one hand, or they'll be carrying massive twigs for a fire in the other hand, or they'll be having a conversation with someone in the village, and all the while they're balancing this pot on their head. And that's what it means to know that Krishna is the doer, that you do your daily activities, and all the while you keep that pot somehow in the forefront, or even in the back of your mind. You just keep it as a, you know, it's almost my go-to phrase as well. You know, when someone says, oh, well done on this service, and this is going so well, my go-to phrase, even if I don't have full inner knowing of this, and I'm not fully realized on this point, the first thing that comes up my mouth, and it's almost by habit now, is Krishna's doing it. Or my guru, he's making it all happen. And even just by repeating that sentence as the years have gone by, it's helped me to just remember that, like the pot on the head.
Yeah.
And it helps me to not then get too puffed up and proud, and, you know, stay in a safe position. That if you think your teacher and God, your guru and God are doing everything, and they've given you the means and the skills and the vocabulary and the repertoire, and, you know, they're making all the things happen, then it brings a level of humility. And, you know, I remember you've told us before of humility comes from that word humus, which means that you're then fertile. You're fertile for spiritual transformation to grow. So go forth and do your services and do whatever you want to do to change the world. Have good guidance.
What's that verse? Mukam karoti vachalam.
Yeah. Pango lange te girim yad kripa tamaham bande shri gurun dinataranam.
What does that mean?
Mukam karoti vachalam, that even a lame man can speak and a cripple can cross mountains, a blind man can see by the grace and by the by the grace of God and by the grace of Guru.
That's a nice verse.
Yeah. Hukum karoti vāchalam.
We speak a lot about like God being the doer, the person who allowed all these things to happen.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, God is also the person that will stop certain things happening.
How interesting.
As well, right? So like when we were talking about like how do I know that I'm not the controller? It's because if you put two people side by side and they do exactly the same endeavor to, let's just say, earn £1 million, one may succeed and the other may not get anywhere. And that's apparent in the world, right? There's so many examples of that. Same upbringing, same this, same that, same strategy, whatever it may be. But one will achieve and the other might not. And then did you really do anything? What did you do?
Right.
Right? And it's also the understanding that actually Krishna is involved to sanction something to happen or not happen as well at the same time. It's a really tricky concept actually, just for just a beginner into bhakti to really comprehend and understand, unless you start to really play with the practice, unless you start to really analyze life through that lens, then it starts to make a lot more sense. Like, okay, it's not about me and it's not for me. And when
it takes humility to say, I didn't do that.
For sure, yeah.
Like, we're actually the kind of people who will take credit for something that we haven't done.
Yeah.
So it actually takes humility to do something, even if you have done it. If it was you that made the £1 million, and to say it wasn't me, like that takes some depth of character. You know, we're more the type of people who somehow £1 million is accidentally transferred into our bank account, and we're like, yeah, you know, it's just worked hard, and you know.
Yeah, totally. I think for I think as for spiritual activities, it's probably easier to adjust to that. Like, for example, we just took 60 people to Vrindavan, and we know that Vrindavan is not an easy place to enter. You have to be in the right consciousness. Did we do that? Or did Krishna just allow that to happen? You facilitate that to happen, right?
Right.
So for spiritual things, I think it's a lot easier. But when we talk about material things like jobs and just, you know, everything not connected to anything sort of spiritual, it is hard. It's hard to like...
You have to look at the ultimate purpose of that, I guess. You have to boil it down as much as possible to the essence of why you're doing it. And if it is for hedonistic reasons, then it's hard to see the God formula, I guess, behind it all. But if you're listening to this because you're part of a group of people who want spiritual upliftment, and you're listening to this because you're attracted by spirituality. And so I guess our audience is already of that knowledge. But I guess, how do you see God in all of your activities? It's by trying to see the ultimate purpose of that. So why are you going to work? See, like bhakti, when you simplify it, I heard this from Pundarik Goswami. He says that if you simplify it, bhakti means that if you're cooking for one person in your life on a day-to-day basis, now you cook for two. You cook for yourself and God. And if you're going to love someone, you love not just that person, but you love the God in them. And if you're going to, any activity you do, try to just, as Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada would say, you Krishnaize it. You put on the lens of seeing it with that tint. And so only then can it be easy to say, it's not me that's doing it. But if you can't put the tint on, then it's harder, especially when it's all about hedonism and sense gratification, and you're trying to be someone in this world for the sake of being someone in this world. But what I really appreciate, for example, about some of the Indian billionaires, if you look at the Ambani family, or you look at, anyway, there's many examples, not even from the Indian culture, but people who have done very well, but then they also have altruistic qualities or humanitarian qualities, or even spiritual goals and desires of their life. They'll often attribute what's happened to me is for a purpose and for a reason. Whereas, someone like Dan Bilzerian, who apparently is not even a real billionaire, or there's a whole controversy around him.
Really,
yeah.
He's on boats with loads of girls all the time.
Yeah.
That guy, yeah.
Don't know why he was doing what he was doing, innit? Anyway, go forward with God confidence and go and do whatever you want to do with that rose tint of devotion, and do it with good guidance, and I think you're in a good place, right?
I'd say so. It's quite a safe place to be in.
Safe place. We like safe places. Go and do some incredible things and give the credit to Guru and God. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of For Soul's Sake. See you on the next one. If you enjoyed this podcast, you'll love my interview with Raghunath Kapo on his fascinating journey from New York punk to monk. Go check it out.
The guy just said, I've got a gun and I'm going to kill everyone tonight. And it was just one of those wake-up calls that you get when you hear like, oh, tonight's the night. I forgot that we all die. It's one of these things as a monk you read every day that life is temporary, your body's temporary, people leaving their bodies, etc. But you'd never think it's going to happen to you that day.